Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the sixth episode of Behind the Music with Elia. I'm your host, Elia Msawir. I can't believe it has been 6 months since we launched Behind the Music. 6 months, six episodes, six guests. So thank you so much for believing in us and sticking around all this time. It has been a roller coaster indeed. I hosted guests from every corner of the music industry, or shall I say legends, actually, that shifted the music business in so many ways. So thank you again, and hopefully you're leaving every episode with bag full of knowledge. Before I start this episode, you all know by now that Dubai Media City is currently the region's largest business district for content creation and media industries. Alongside Dubai Production City and Dubai Studio City, the three pillars create the UAE's media ecosystem and host more than 3,000 companies and 34,000 professionals. Coming back to Behind the Music, the aim of this new initiative is to, well, it's no longer new, but is to empower and inspire talented artists and musicians across the region by providing the secret tips and tricks and details behind the scenes that could help you and your music to crack the code to a successful career in the creative industries. That being said, before I talk about my guest, please do share, like, comment, subscribe, send it to your friends, family, everybody that you think they would gain knowledge from these episodes and this show, and you're not gonna be disappointed. That being said, my guest for today is somebody that you all been asking me about. You have so many questions about music copyrights, publishing, licensing, sync, you name it. And obviously, I cannot answer all this. So, 30 years in the music industry, 30 years in his career, from being the director of international music publishing for YouTube and Google Play, to the Chief International Business Officer of PRS for Music. Please welcome Mr. Sami Valkonen. Hi, Sami.
Hi, Elia. Nice to be here.
It's my pleasure to meet you and talk to you. A lot of people, to be honest, during my career, they ask me about the copywriting, the licensing, the publishing, and I've always I do have a bit of knowledge, but obviously coming from an expert like yourself, it's gonna actually ease everybody's mind now, especially in this region. As you know, we're still baby steps towards copywriting and licensing and royalties and all this. So we're gonna talk about all this in this episode, and
It can
let's
get
start.
pretty complex, I have to tell you that.
Definitely, definitely. I'm an artist manager, and as much as I can tell my artists about certain things, it's still there's a lot of great areas. There's a lot of knowledge that I still need to gain. And to be honest, these episodes I do them for myself as well. Like I learned from the people and the guests that I talk to, and I've been looking forward to this episode since I started. I wanna get my mind around this subject.
Well,
Um,
hopefully I won't disappoint you terribly.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Amazing. So, Sammy, while I was introducing you, obviously I mentioned the your career from Google, YouTube to PRS for music. How did it all start? What caught your interest, to go through
Yeah,
the process
so,
and become, you know, where you are now?
so it all started with a band in my native Finland, and we were kind of a one-hit wonder in 1982.
Nice.
We peaked and then we faded into obscurity very soon thereafter, but during that short peak, I was able to meet basically all of the other key artists in Finland. So I went into artist management. I started a booking agency. I promoted concerts and festivals. And that was through to 1990 when I moved to Los Angeles to go to business school originally. But I was then hired by BMG, which was one of the big major record companies at the time.
Right.
There is a new BMG now, but it's
Yeah.
actually a completely separate BMG from the BMG that I was in. So I was there pretty much throughout the 90s, and to just at the end of that, I started getting into digital music. In 2001, we were doing the first ever trials of digital music.
Right.
I left BMG as part of the merger with Sony, and I then went to get a law degree. And after graduating after becoming an attorney, I then did music copyright litigation for a couple of years before going to Nokia for their Comes with Music initiative.
Oh wow!
Which
Okay.
then led me to Google. And after 8 years at Google, I felt it was time for something different. And then here I am at PRS.
Was that how long have you been with PRS so far now?
It's actually going to be 3 years at the end of this month.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, literally tomorrow.
Wow. And you're still based in the States, or you're in the UK?
No. We moved to the UK 3 years ago.
Right.
We were in London for a couple of years, and a year ago we moved to beautiful Brighton, which is
Nice.
paradise.
Yeah, of course. I was with one of my artists a few years back in Brighton. We didn't play a show there, but we were passing through. But yeah, it's
Cool.
a lovely city.
Yeah.
Next time
Yeah.
we'll pass by PRS, knowing that he recently joined you guys. So
Oh, great.
yeah,
Great, fantastic.
definitely we'll pass by the office and we'll
Yeah,
say
absolutely.
Awesome.
Give me a call. We'll have lunch.
Done deal.
Hang out.
So speaking of PRS, a lot of people asked me when I published the episode, like, okay, we understand, but what does PRS do for the music industry nowadays?
Yeah. So our purpose is stated as follows: to grow and protect the value of music rights entrusted on us. So basically, we are a member organization, and our members, when they join us, they assign the copyright in the performing right, which is a part of the overall copyright in the composition, to us. And it's then our mission to make sure that that copyright is protected and that it is properly licensed and monetized around the world. And we collect the royalties from the exploitation of those copyrights and process them and pay them down to our members.
Yeah.
Just to give a couple of little, I have to have a little cheat sheet here, so I'm being transparent. I'm cheating here, but just to give you a couple of basic stats about PRS. So we have 155,000 composers and music publishers as our members. We have over 5 million composition registered in our database. In 2020, about 8,000 new members joined us. In 2020, we had 22.4 trillion performances that we were able to count of our members' music.
Wow.
Obviously, last year was difficult. We had about 700 million pounds in revenues. In 2019, we exceeded 800 million pounds. So it's a pretty sizable operation, and we try to make it as efficient as possible.
Does that make PRS one of like the top 5 companies in the world, let's say?
Well, in international revenues, we are number 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So all right.
Obviously, we have a little bit of a benefit because in the United States, there are 3 PROs. So there are 3 companies like us. So the US market gets split into 3 ways, where we have a pretty good hold on the UK market. Now, there are only 5 societies in the world that are net exporters. And obviously, we are one of them because our members' music travels around the world very well. If you can imagine some societies in some European countries or Asian countries, their music doesn't necessarily travel that well across the border from their native country, which is another reason why for international revenues we are number one.
Nice. That's a very good information. But yeah, the numbers you just stated are like, yeah, I agree totally. So speaking of this, many questions towards me. They were like, okay, obviously people know by now. Hopefully, they know what is copyright, but there's a big lack of knowledge and information around publishing and sync and licensing. Would you be able to share some knowledge, like in a short story, what's the difference so people can understand where
Yeah,
they, yeah,
so copyright obviously is a form of intellectual property that provides the protection for the expression. It does not provide protection for the idea, that would be a patent.
right,
And it does not provide protection for the branding, that would be a trademark.
right,
Now, copyrights obviously are not exclusive to music. You can have copyrights in photographs or paintings and films and all kinds of other creative expression. The copyright from music is typically seen to be divided into two major categories. There's more, but the two major categories are the right of performance and the right of reproduction.
right,
So that's why we speak about performing rights. The right of reproduction in the lingo of the business is typically called a mechanical right. So people
right,
talk about performing rights and mechanical rights. Now, PRS, we only deal with the performing right, which is a right when something is played live, something is played off of a recording in a live setting. Obviously, also in a digital transmission, there's a subsidiary right of the performing right, which is called the communication to the public by electronic means, which is something that we control. Now, publishers, and publishers is a little bit of an odd term because you can certainly publish your work without having a publisher.
right,
That's called
yeah,
self-publishing.
yeah,
But the primary work of the publishers, if you sign a deal with one, is that they ensure that your work is registered properly around the world, because otherwise it may be impossible for us or for anyone to collect your revenues from foreign destinations in the event the local society in that jurisdiction doesn't have the requisite information about your song.
right,
So the publishers play a very important part in making sure that the songs and the works, as we tend to call them in the industry, are properly registered around the world. In addition to that, I mean, publishers also, they do have creative services. So they have people who will work with you to work on your music, maybe propose collaborations with other songwriters that they think you might work well with. They have contacts with film production companies so that they can pitch your music to films and TV programs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the publishing industry. And then I think the third thing that you asked about was about sync.
yes,
And sync is a form of the mechanical right. So again, it's all of these two main categories of rights, which are performing and reproduction. They all have kind of subsidiary different things underneath them. And sync is a form of the reproduction right. It's the combination of the music with visual images. So a sync right means when you have a movie, for example, in the event you incorporate music into a movie, that requires a sync right, which is separate from the actual right of reproducing the movie.
right, yes,
That's scratching it at the surface.
yeah, of course,
More
of course.
complicated when
Definitely. No, what you just did is very, it's very good, and I think I think people will get that. Somebody asked, but you already actually answered. Does PRS give you the opportunity to have your music on TV shows and movies? But yeah, this
Yeah,
goes back to publishing, right?
yeah. As an entity, we're not involved in
Yeah,
pitching the
right,
music to TV series or movies.
right,
However, my team, I have a team that does a lot of work using, for example, music recognition technology to make sure that when our music is in a movie, that it is properly paid for and collected for. So we track movies. We request cue sheets of all the movies and all the TV programs pretty much around the world, to investigate whether any of the music in those movies or TV shows is from our members, and if so, then we make sure that we make claims to the various societies around the world when that movie or TV production is shown in their jurisdiction.
right. So if somebody wants to use my music, and I'm registered member of PRS for music, they have to contact you to be able to get an approval on this. Is this how it works?
Well, typically what we do is in the UK, we have licenses with all the music users. So therefore, if you are a broadcaster, we would have a license with you. If you are a cinema, we would have a license with you. If you're a live venue, we'd have a license with you. If you're a hairdresser that plays the radio and the hairdressing
Yeah.
and establishment, we would have a license with you. So our licenses would not need to be on a work by work basis. We'll call them blanket licenses.
Right. Yeah.
So we issue licenses to these music users, and then they need to report to us the music that they use. And then we will calculate the royalties from that revenue based on the reporting that we get. Outside of the UK, we rely on what's called the Sister Society Network, which is other societies in other countries
Right.
who do the collection for us, and
Yeah.
they then pay the usage of our repertoire to PRS so that we can pay it to our members, similarly as we do for music consumed in the United Kingdom that is actually French or German or Emirati or whatever.
Yeah. That's something we're gonna be discussing at a later stage in the interview. You know, the region
Yes.
here. I know.
Yeah, actually, I have to say that that was a bit of a mistake because currently it's problematic if you're Emirati because there isn't a society there that we can
Yeah.
contract with.
Which.
But
Yeah.
hopefully there's change coming, which we can talk
I think.
about later.
Yeah, well, I have some info, but I don't know if I'm supposed to actually. Maybe let's see. Let's see how the conversation will go. But yeah, a lot of people has been talking about collection societies here, and I think somebody already succeeded. Um, she's like he's like 30 minutes away from my house, but um, yeah, we'll discuss this because also the thing is I work for Expo, and I'm doing the opening ceremony, and the licensing conversation has been coming up since I joined, which is 3 months now, and it involves a lot of complicated process between live
Yep.
performances and the use of songs and etc etc. So yeah,
We
and
are. I have one person basically dedicated to the expo currently because it's a
really,
very
yeah.
complex situation that is very important to handle correctly because it really sets a precedent for the whole region.
Of course, and especially because Expo is an international event at the moment, and for six
Yeah.
months it's gonna be running everyday music, whether artists, whether playback, whether shows,
Yeah.
TVs, etc. So, yeah, I believe you need a department at, at this point. Just call it Expo department. All right. So for everyone who's watching at the moment the show, please, if you have any questions, shoot it. If whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on YouTube, just type down your questions right now. The episode does not go more than less than an hour actually. So shoot it now so I can be able to ask Sami all your questions. Continue our conversation. Before I actually keep going with the music stuff, it's something I usually ask my guests. What is your biggest success story?
Well, first of all, any success story is always going to be a collaboration. So there's never a success story that is one person's success story.
Right.
But some of the things that I feel closest to my heart in terms of accomplishments during my career, going back to Expo, I ran the merchandising operation in the Portugal Lisbon Expo in 1998, which was amazing in that we literally started with absolutely nothing. We hired 500 people, we built 26 stores, and we were able to pull it off. Obviously, the being at Google when we were starting Google Play, when Google Play was literally a PowerPoint deck of 5 pages.
Yeah.
And being an integral part of making that PowerPoint deck into what became of Google Play, that was another highlight. And at PRS, I think when I came in, I made very, very significant changes to the department and the just the culture of how the international department at Google works, and I feel that ended up working out very well. And right now, I'm just super proud of the team. It's really come together, and I think we're just doing great work.
Amazing. Does like PRS work with labels as well, or do labels, let's say in the UK, they work like solo in terms of royalties and?
Yeah, so we have there's another society in the United Kingdom called PPL.
Okay.
And PPL is responsible for collecting for the equitable remuneration for sound recordings. So we have a joint venture with PPL,
right?
Surprisingly called PRS PPL.
Okay.
And the point of that joint venture is that because you do have to pay royalties for the public performance of both the underlying musical work and the recording, that instead of these establishments needing to have two separate licenses, they just sign a license with our joint venture, and it's a single transaction, and the money is then divided between the recording part and the musical composition part. Right. So that's a relatively recent development, and it's really something that simplifies the business for the licensees, which is obviously important to us, because otherwise you can easily have people scratching their heads because they don't understand the difference between the recording right and the musical composition right, and they're like, why are all these people coming asking me for money? Like, I already paid for music once. Who is this other entity that's now claiming that they also need to get paid? So we do obviously have that. We collaborate with the actual record labels in terms of just industry developments and so forth, but their rights are obviously entirely separate from ours. So there's no official stuff that happens between us. We run our businesses independently.
Okay. And do you find, like, is there, like, obviously what you just said does not indicate any kind of competition, but is there between like collection societies and like the label, like, PRS and labels, or that has each one of them, they work based on their artists?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty deep question, because we are both on the same side in terms of protecting the rights of our members and our artists.
Yeah.
We are both on the same side in wanting to make sure that there's no piracy, and that there's a lot of things on which we are completely aligned.
Right.
At the end of the day, there's a limited amount of money, and the money goes either to them or it goes to us.
Yeah.
So therefore, there are situations where the relative pots of how that overall pie is divided can create some friction. But overall, like I said, in most things, we're perfectly aligned in to protect the creators.
Amazing, amazing. A question from somebody: if I am based in the UAE or the Middle East, and I joined PRS, would PRS for Music be able to collect for me? I don't know. Yeah, okay, I got the question. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a lot of non-UK members. We have members from the Gulf region
Right.
already. Actually, many of them. We have obviously a lot of members from the United States. We have a lot of members from India. We have members from pretty much all over the world. So absolutely, that we would be able to service anyone from the UAE who has compositions that
Yeah.
are used around the world.
Yeah, this is where it brings me back to when we started this talk. One of my artists just joined you. Well, we still need to file the papers, but I mean, we it's done deal. I just need to by Sunday, hopefully, I will ship the papers to you. But actually, the process was very smooth. I just want everybody to know. Which also, my question to you is, how can somebody join PRS, and do they need to pay for something, or how much if there's a percent? I personally know because I did the process for my artist, but I want people to understand what kind of percentage they need to pay, or if there's a fee before they register, and how is the process?
Yeah. So in the event there's somebody who is interested in joining, I would recommend to email to admissions@prsformusic.com. So that's admissions@prsformusic.com. That way, you will get a contact with one of our member representatives, and you can ask further questions. You can understand if it's the right thing for you to do. The basic concept is that you do need to have compositions that are actually being used somewhere.
Yeah.
There is a one-time £100 joining fee,
Right.
and when there is revenue coming in for your compositions, it depends on the form of exploitation. For digital, we take 10%, and for some other forms of exploitation, we take a bit more. Typically not more than 20%.
Right.
And once you're in our database, all of our systems kind of kick in motion, and the works that you have written and the works that you have registered, because that's also a very important thing, is that you actually have to register your works, otherwise they will not be on our radar.
Of course.
But once you have registered your works, then all of our revenue assurance to try to locate their usage around the world and try to make sure that that usage is properly claimed and paid kicks into motion.
Nice. As you heard, people, it's a very easy process, and I think it's a very cheap membership for what you'll be getting in return. We're talking about, we can say, international scale, deal and service, and even if you're in the UAE, in the Middle East, you'll be able to get paid from PRS for music. Somebody asked at the now. Hello, first, thank you for this interesting episode. I want to ask you, can I use music on my videos published on social media like Instagram or YouTube? Does it matter if the page is commercial or not? And how can I legally use songs over my videos? Note that I get around 500 to 2K views, and all my videos are non-commercial, non-profit making.
So in the event the compositions are original, and that means that, because for YouTube, obviously, I worked for a
Would
long time.
flag
So,
it immediately.
so the YouTube system is based on their content ID technology, and the content ID technology is a register of basically all of the music in the world. And in the event a video contains music that is on content ID, then that is flagged as needing to be licensed.
Right.
However, in the event you have your music and you actually have not registered it anywhere, then content ID would not know about it.
Right.
And therefore, in the event you have it in your non-commercial videos, it will not be taken down because there is no infringement, because content ID will not recognize that as belonging to anyone.
Right. Continuing this question, by the way, the guy is his name is Alphonse, and continuing his question, do you think it's fair for YouTube or Facebook, if I'm somebody that, like he said, 500 views, to, he likes a song and he wants to use it on, let's say, a video game, or that streaming or whatever. Do you think it's fair for them to take it down? How much would that actually like pay for the artist? I mean, for me, definitely artists always need to pay. That there's no compromising in this. It's just I want to see a small YouTuber, small Facebook page, etc., etc. Do you think it's fair that they're taking everything down?
Well, first of all, it's not a YouTube or a Facebook issue, it's a rights holder issue.
Ah, okay. Right.
So it's
yeah,
not
because
YouTube or-
everybody when they contact me, like, oh yeah, they start cursing the platforms, like, guys, it doesn't work that way. Yeah.
No, it's not the platform, it's the rights holder. And what you have there is a typical slippery slope argument where
Right.
where do you then draw the line? Is the line at 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000, or what if there's a little bit of revenue, but it's very, so it's impossible to then say when should it stop? Yes, it's a very logical argument to say that if you have something that has a couple of thousand views and it's clearly non-commercial, like, why are you worrying about that? But from a rights holder perspective, it becomes a really difficult issue, because in the event you don't hold the line at zero, then where do
Yeah.
you hold it?
True. And this is a perfect answer for everybody that's using the music illegally. Unfortunately, you cannot. And again, it's not the platforms. It goes back to the artists and the copywriting system that.
Exactly.
And is there it's a very dumb question, but these questions I get all the time, and I want somebody who's expert to give this. Is there a limit, or I mean a levels for copywriting, in terms of if I want to use the music, like if I use it, let's say, on YouTube, it's something, and then if I perform live with it, it's something else, or both I need to pay for the same amount?
Yeah, I mean, a composition is a composition. So in the event you use somebody else's composition, whether you use a recording of it or whether you perform it yourself,
Right.
you are using that other individual's intellectual property. And presumably by you performing it, you are getting some benefit from your performance of that. So a part of that benefit rightfully needs to go to the person whose music you're performing.
Right. Okay, so that makes sense, and yeah, it's pretty straightforward, basically. If you want to use somebody's music, you have to pay for them, and I think it's very fair. And yeah.
Well, unless they give you the permission to use it without payment, but the control of how somebody's music is used really needs to be with whoever that person is, whose property it is. It's kind of, there's a lot of people who equate intellectual property with physical property. Obviously, there's a lot of differences in it, but like if you have a bag and it's your bag, then if somebody else wants to use your bag, they need to ask for your permission.
Of course, definitely. I have a story I wanted to share with you, and see if you can get some answers that I've always had. So there's a band from Lebanon who took the the approval and the licensing of one of the songs for the band to cover it in their own way, noting that the artist knew. So basically, the band is a metal band, and the artist is an Arabic Lebanese artist, and they made it like a rock version of the song, and they had everything legally, on the table and no issue whatsoever. When the song came out and it kind of went viral here in the region and in Lebanon, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a week after it was released, the artist they were like, "No, you need to take it down," and they kind of forced the band by doing a lawsuit against them. Is that like this can happen if you have the approval and then the artist decided, "I don't want it," after a week from the release?
Well, that sounds like a case of bad lawyering, because in the event the band, the owner of that copyright actually gave that permission, and if there's any kind of document that shows that that permission had been given,
Yeah.
then obviously it can't be retracted, or it can only be retracted on the basis of what has been agreed on the possible retraction of that authorization. But in the event you just go based on somebody saying something to you and you have no way of proving it, then you may have to face the consequences.
Of course.
People hate lawyers. People don't like lawyers meddling in on everything, but sometimes it doesn't need to be a complex, legally drafted contract, but you have to have, in the event somebody's giving you an authorization to do something, you need to be able to prove that that was the case. And it doesn't sound like in this case that was what happened.
I don't know the act, like the small details of it, but let's say if they received a confirmation by WhatsApp or by email,
Mhm.
does it stack as a legal document for them to use the song?
If it's clear and unambiguous, and if it's given by somebody who has the authority to give it,
Right.
then whether it's WhatsApp or email or whatever,
Yeah.
shouldn't make a difference. But obviously, there is then a question of, did the person who sent you the WhatsApp, did that person actually have the authority to give that? What were the words that were used? Was it a clear, unambiguous authorization, or was it something like, yeah, that sounds good?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you get
Okay.
into the details of that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Another story, also stories that are happening around me, and I just like to have the details for. Um, One of my artists had an original track. He owns everything for it, and he kind of played it for a UK based show here in UAE, and obviously it's out on YouTube, everything's good, but he owns everything for it. And then he released a video for it later on, like specifically for him, and then YouTube flagged it, and then we had to go back to the show producers, and they needed to, because they released obviously the video and the music through a label at the time. So I found it a bit weird that YouTube took it down for like no monetization, etc., etc., even though we own the rights for it. But they released it before us, obviously. Is that like a mistake from YouTube, or whoever releases first has the rights from YouTube, basically? Obviously, everything worked in 24 hours again, all back to normal. But I mean, that few hours was a bit of stressful for the artist.
Yeah, I can understand that. I really would not want to go into commenting on specific situations, because there's
Yeah,
unique facts that are present in anything.
of course.
I mean, it sounds like in that situation, the fact that it was first released by a different party
Yeah,
somehow registered that work as being of that party, and therefore, when it was then reintroduced through a different channel,
Yeah.
YouTube thought, well, this may be an infringement because why would this other party have the same song as that first party?
Right.
So I believe that it was just an honest attempt by YouTube to prevent what could possibly have been
Right.
infringement, which obviously it wasn't. And if you got it resolved in 24 hours, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, actually less than 24 hours. We
Yeah.
to be honest, was 3 hours in total, and we re-uploaded and everything was smooth. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
they did a very fantastic job with us. So yeah, I because when this happened, we were like, oh, today's the release day, and if we don't resolve this now, we're gonna push it for a week, etc., etc. But yeah, it was a smooth process. So thank you for giving me the information on this. Uh, we are coming actually to the end of our episode. I want to take a question. So whoever wants to ask a very question, like a question that was not answered during this episode, and if you just showed up, please go back to the episode after we're done. It's going to be recorded. It's going to be up on Facebook, on YouTube, and later on the XB Media City Instagram account. I'm gonna actually ask you the last question, and if somebody pops up with a weird question, I'll ask you that. Um, Talking again about the Middle East, have you considered opening an office here? And if not, would you be interested to go through a third party to collect in this region or in this country?
Yeah, so that's a really good and a very, very important question because obviously the Gulf region is an area where there is substantial use of music. It's wealthy, so
Yes.
there's money,
Yeah.
and historically there has never been any ability to collect on music rights there. There have been several societies who have kind of looked into the possibility of launching operations there. The regulatory environment is very complex. Obviously, there's multiple countries there that you would have to cover in order to have the scale that you would need. So we have looked into it. We're doing some things, like for example, we sued Qatar Airways a couple of years ago,
Oh wow.
and we are actively pursuing these airlines that
Nice.
have had a free lunch for decades, which is completely outrageous. We've won the jurisdictional challenge of Qatar Airways, so they're now stuck in the UK courts. So we're very bullish about our prospects in that case. But in terms of the kind of day-to-day operations of public performance and broadcasters, there is an interesting development, which I think you were alluding to, which is ESMA, which
Yes.
I understand is music in Arabic.
Yeah.
Spec Hussein, I've known him for probably 15 years at least.
Yeah.
He's trying to do the right thing and trying to put together a entity that can do collections in the region.
Yeah.
So we have just recently entered into an agreement with ESMA to represent
Yes.
PRS rights in the region. And it's not an easy task he has taken, but we wish him all the luck, and hopefully we'll see some success.
Yes, so you said it. So it's Spec from Pop Arabia launching ISMA. It's gonna help everybody here in the country and hopefully in the whole region. Definitely, he's been working on this for quite some times now, and
Yeah.
and hopefully things are gonna be smoother. And the problem is that the country wants to be part of this, but the issue is that nobody except now at the moment Spec that is actually trying to do something about it, because it's an area where it's very big. We're talking about a whole country, a whole region, a whole Gulf that wants to adapt, but we're talking about millions and millions of artists probably now in this region, and it's not easy to bring them all together. It's not easy for governments to come all together, but there's a lot of talks that we want to be on the right side of history. We want to be involved in this. but the only way to do this is through, let's say, PRS being involved, ISMA being involved, other maybe other collection societies or something, or other companies. But numbers talk in the end of the day, and if we are capable of showing these numbers to government entities, I believe laws are going to be changed the next day, and collection societies are going to grow and be active here. So definitely, if you keep working with Spec and ISMA, let's have you here in UAE soon, part of a music conference that we're trying to hopefully do. Also, this show is part of a festival done by Dubai Media City called On the XB. Unfortunately, the first edition was great, and then COVID happened, and it never happened again. But hopefully, by next year, or probably end of this year, we'll resume working on this, and we'll have you to come and represent PRS for music. And yeah, that's great to hear. I don't have any super interesting questions, and I don't want to drag this conversation more than I dragged it now. Sami, thank you so much for giving me the honor.
My pleasure. And just to comment on your
Yes.
kind invitation, I absolutely expect to be there at some point during the expo. So maybe maybe we'll set something up and hang out and
100%.
and enjoy good music.
100%. I am gonna be involved heavily. I already involved in music and content for the opening ceremony, and hopefully by the after the opening ceremony, I'm already joining a team for the whole expo, and I'll be definitely inviting you, and definitely we'll have our lunch talk and lunch meeting and everything, and we talk about this all day.
Excellent.
Sami, thank you so much again. It's an honor, a pleasure for me to meet you and talk to you, and looking forward to meet you live. Please send my regards to your whole team. They're amazing, to be honest. On the emails, they're very responsive, and each one of them is on top of their game, and I believe they're doing a fantastic job. PRS for music is doing a fantastic job. My artists are joining it, and yeah. If you want to say any last words for the people watching you, please do. And yeah.
It really just has been a pleasure. So thank you for inviting me. I loved our discussion, and look forward to more, and all the best to everybody in the region.
Thank you so much, Sami. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching the 6th episode of Behind the Music with Elia. It has been a roller coaster, like I said earlier. 6 episodes, 6 months, 6 guests, and we're not stopping here. I'm not gonna give any more details regarding the upcoming episode, but stay tuned. It's gonna be legit. It's always the best guest in the world related to music and their career. If you have any questions, if you want to watch this episode again, it's gonna be up on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All Dubai Media City. Thank you so much for the whole team. Thank you all for watching. See you next month.